So I'm going to talk about a hilarious fail of an afternoon that I had in Berlin in 2019. I want to talk about this just to give perspective on consistency. On some days could be bad, but you got to look at the overall picture. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I make a video every day, a podcast every day, and a newsletter every week. And then I'm going to talk about this insane party that I went to last night where I met all of these teen millionaires and learned a black hat secret about Twitter X. That is what I'm talking about on episode 78 of The Edward Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Regular listeners of the podcast might know that I have a daily journal that I've been keeping for like 15 years, nearly 15 years, where I write in everything that I've done every day, who I've met, where I am, where I'm going, what the people that I've met do, like everything. I just write in insane detail. And sometimes I go back and look over it. I have a time machine. Basically, I love that I have a time machine. And I get to relive past successes, triumphs, great moments in my life, and also past failures. And I was reading about my first time in Berlin yesterday, and I came across this journal entry, which is really funny. And I read it, and I remember this time very vividly. And I want to read it to you because we've all had days like this. We have all had days like this. And knowing that and reading that, I think it puts bad moments in perspective because you realize how fleeting they are and that you got to stay focused on the big picture. I know that normally I give more tangible growth hacks on this show, but and I don't normally talk about mindset, but I think this is just such a funny story. I got to share this. I got to share it. All right. So the day was April 13th, 2019. My journal knows everything. April 13th, 2019. It was a Saturday. I was in Berlin. I'm going to read this to you. Hilarious fail of an afternoon. Switch SIM cards briefly so I can be reached on my old number. While making the switch, my new SIM card flies out of the phone. All right, so I'm switching SIM cards because I want to be reached on my American number. And while I'm switching, my current SIM card, my German SIM card, flies out of the phone. Search my kitchen intensely for the new SIM. Literally rip out a skirting board thinking maybe the SIM slid behind it. Search for probably 25 minutes, maybe more. Don't find the SIM. Walk to Alexanderplatz to buy a new SIM card, 25 euros. Get home and reach into my pocket to get phone. Find the SIM card I thought I lost. It must have flown into my pocket from my phone. So I spent 25 minutes searching through my apartment, ripped out a skirting board from this Airbnb, and then went to go buy a new SIM card. The whole time, the SIM card that I was going to replace was in my pocket. Go back to Alexanderplatz to try to return the new SIM card. When I arrive, I realize I left the SIM card at home. So the SIM card that I went to Alexanderplatz to return, I left it at home. Go back once again. So I go home, get the SIM card, go back once again to Alexanderplatz to return the SIM card. Because it has been activated, I cannot return it. 3 hours and 25 euros poorer. I walk around looking for a restaurant to eat at. I sit down in several trying to decide and ultimately realize all I want is the comfort of my Airbnb and my leftovers. I go home. Switching SIM cards doesn't actually do what I needed it to do. All of this is for naught. Oh, that's such a funny entry. Oh my gosh. I remember that afternoon and I'm just like, what the F? How did it keep on snowballing this far? And it was just a complete waste of several hours and a bunch of effort. And so I read this and it just had me thinking, like I had this like mini epiphany that the bad times that we face, they're fleeting. They don't last because that was 4 years ago and then you forget about it. The only reason I remember it is because I have this journal, but we all forget about it. So if you're in a funk, it's going to go away. And I like hearing about how it's going to go away. And then it's going to, because after this, I had incredible times. In fact, later that night, I had a good night. And then the next days were amazing. So these bad times don't last, which I think knowing that for me, it helps me put up with the bad times because I know they're not going to last. That helps me a lot. That helps me be consistent on days where being consistent is really hard, where it's hard to get out a video every day, where it's hard to get out a podcast every day. Knowing that difficulty will not last especially if I keep at it and I develop a crazy audience that you can only get by being consistent. If I develop that audience and the good times come, and then the good times will stay. But there's always bad times. There's also always going to be bad times. Like this is a like random bad time. I went to Germany. I went to Europe because I had made a bunch of money in crypto. That was a good time. We launched the first play to earn game. It was pretty successful. And then I'm like, let me go to Europe. Let me see Europe. And I went to Europe, and that was a good time. And then you have bad times. And so like, it doesn't last. I think like what you want to be in life, I was thinking about this last night, is how there's like very wealthy people who are still fragile. And I love this book by Nassim Taleb called Anti-Fragile. I would so highly recommend that book, Anti-Fragile. You want to be anti-fragile. You want to be able to thrive in any time. All right, I don't want to talk about this night. Last night was kind of wild. Let me set the scene. Let me set the scene. So I'm growing on TikTok. People are starting to pay attention to me. Thank you for everybody who is listening from TikTok. Really appreciate that. Seriously. And this one woman, her name is Avni. She has this company called Genshi. She has a pretty cool TikTok. She's in San Francisco. She's always going to FANG offices, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. She's always going to these big FANG high-tech offices. She's throwing cool events in San Francisco, and she invites me to one of her events thinking that I'm in San Francisco. I'm like, I'm not in San Francisco. I can't come. So we stay in touch, and she comes to New York, and she's like, I'm throwing an event in New York. Can you come? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come. So I go. I bring my friend. I bring my friend who's from Meta, who actually his company is about to do like something really crazy. I bring this friend, and it's at a space that normally it's at a networking space that all the other events that I've been at this space have been mediocre. So I don't know. I think this event could be good because of Avni, who's throwing it from TikTok. It seems like from TikTok, she has a great network of people. So I think it could be good, but I don't know. I think there's also a good chance that it might be totally mediocre. And when I get there, it's actually like half empty. I get there 20 minutes after it starts. It's half empty. I'm like, oh man, like, oh well, I'll stay for an hour and try to have a good time. Further painting the picture, the night before, I had watched this video on YouTube asking teen millionaires how they got rich. It's from this guy, Jordan Welsh. He has a great YouTube. And I watched that video as I was lying in bed, and then I fell asleep. And I'm standing there at this event, and I turn around and I recognize this guy. And I'm like, oh, I think I've met you somewhere. And we're talking. I'm like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I have this AI music company. And I'm like, did I just watch a YouTube video with you last night? And he's like, yeah, that video came out last night. And so half of the people from this teen millionaire video which was shot in Miami a week ago came out last night. Half of the people from that video were at this event. They were at this event, and I got to meet them. And then it turned out everyone at this event was a killer. This event was full of killers. And I met this guy. He does growth marketing with one of the biggest names in tech. And I can't say more. But what he did tell me is, maybe I'll be able to say more. It's up to him. But he did tell me about how Twitter is manipulated, which was very interesting. Because I told him that, I met some people in Ukraine who have, like, when I lived in Ukraine for 2 years, I lived in Belarus as well. I lived all over Eastern Europe. I met people all over Eastern Europe who did black hat marketing. And a bunch of them had bot farms. And he's like, yeah, the bot farms aren't the way anymore. He's like, what it is now, it's networks of people who have a lot of, I asked, like, how do you make something trend on Twitter? That's what I wanted his answer on. How do you make something, because it used to be bot farms. How do you make something trend on Twitter, on X? And he said, you have to have a network of accounts with a lot of followers. And then they all retweet something, they all share something, they all use the same hashtag. And then that hashtag starts trending, or that topic starts trending. And that's the way that it is now. But it's just networks of highly followed accounts. And it's people who control these networks. And that's the way that it is now. I thought that was very interesting. And yeah, he knows like a lot of black hat stuff. And a lot of cool growth hacks. He knows a lot of cool growth hacks as well. We're just vibing about growth hacks because that's what a lot of this show is about. It's about growth hacks. That's what my TikTok is about. It's about growth hacks. Like, I'm defining my brand, outsmarting the system. That's what I like. That's what's fun for me. Outsmarting the system. Look, overall, the best way to outsmart the system is to be consistent and to make something great. I think yesterday I said make great content. No, just make something great. Be consistent. If it's a company, a brand, a service, or content, but you got to be consistent, improve over time, get so good that people can't ignore you and then they reach out. That's what's happening with me now, with my videos, with this podcast, with everything that I'm doing. And you get consistent, you improve over time, people reach out, they give you insane opportunities. That is the best way to outsmart the system. I talked about this on a different pod. There was a post on Reddit called The Long Cut. Everybody tries to take shortcuts, but the long cut is the best cut that you can take. But you can take plenty of shortcuts along the way while you are doing the long cut. That is my belief. Like the Twitter X glitch that I talk about on the show, that is a shortcut, but it is going towards a long cut. Bottom of funnel, search engine optimization. That's another shortcut. It actually is, because you rank really fast, a lot faster than if you do traditional SEO. But it's evergreen. It gets you towards the long cut. Anyway, long cut. I'm going to end the show on that. I hope you enjoyed. I'm recording this in the morning. It's not even 9 a.m. This is a nice episode. Remember, if you have a fail, those fails are fleeting. Thank you so much for listening. I will talk to all of you again tomorrow. Bye now.